I am the one who sent her to the supply room. I want to be clear about that before anything else, because everything that happened after, the three gurneys coming through those doors, the monitor going flat, the whole floor holding its breath, began with me making a decision I thought was reasonable. I was wrong. I have spent a long time since that November morning understanding how wrong I was, and the honest thing is to say it plainly and let the story do the rest. My name is Ray Kowalski. I have been a charge nurse at Portside Regional for 22 years, and in that time, I have seen a great many people come through those trauma bay, doors with credentials they could not back up, float nurses especially. The system sends you whoever it sends you, and you learn early to read the difference fast, because the margin for error in a level 2 trauma bay is not generous. So when she came in at 6 that morning, Cara Denning, 29 years old, her assignment sheet listing 2 years of community hospital floor work and a certification in basic trauma support. I looked at what was on paper, and the paper was thin. She was quiet. That was the first thing I noticed. Not nervous quiet, not new girl quiet, but the kind of quiet that does not fill space with words it does not need. She took the bay orientation without questions, which I read as inexperience, because most new people ask questions to show they are engaged. She set her bag in the locker room, clipped her badge to her lanyard, and came back to the floor with her stethoscope around her neck and her hands loose at her sides. No wasted movement. I noted it and dismissed it. People can move well and still be out of their depth. At 7:15, Dr. Harmon, our lead trauma attending, 17 years in this bay, not a man who muffles his opinions, came through on rounds and glanced at the board. He saw the float listing, saw her name, and looked at me once. That look was enough. We had 4 attending staff that morning and a census already running hot. I pulled Cara aside before 8. I told her the supply room needed a full inventory before the next shift, a true statement, and that we needed someone detail-oriented on the count. I told her it was important work. I have replayed that conversation more times than I can count. She looked at me steadily, did not argue, took the clipboard I handed her, and walked down the corridor. I watched her go and thought I had managed the morning cleanly. What hit us at 8:47 was not clean. A 3-vehicle collision on the coast road, a delivery truck, an SUV, a motorcyclist, came in fast and came in bad. The paramedics gave us a 30-second radio warning, and that was generous. 2 of the critical patients arrived at the same time, the third 60 seconds behind. Dr. Harmon took the primary bay on a male in his 50s with a suspected aortic injury. I had our second attending, Dr. Patel, on an unconscious woman with a head injury. The motorcyclist, male, late 20s, pulled from the water after the SUV sent him through the guardrail, landed in Bay 3 with a respiratory picture nobody liked. That was when Harmon went down, not the patient. Harmon, he was mid-pursuiter when he put his hand to his chest, said one word, my name, just Ray, and went sideways. He had a history we all knew about and had privately worried about, and every calculation I had made about staffing came undone at once. Patel could not leave the head injury. Our third attending was in surgery upstairs. The fourth had called out sick. I had a PA and 2 nurses, a bay full of critical patients, and 1 attending on the floor. I sent a nurse for Harmon. I was just moving to the primary bay myself. I can do a great deal as a charge nurse, but I am not an attending physician, and there are lines I cannot cross. When I heard her voice, not loud. She was not the kind of person who announced herself with volume. She was just suddenly there, in the door of Bay 1, badge swinging from where she had pushed through at a run, and she said, what do you need? I told her to go back to the supply room. She looked past me at the patient. Whatever she saw, it settled something in her face. Not panic, not hesitation, but the particular focus of a person who has looked at a situation like this before and knows the order in which things need to happen. She said, his breath sounds are unequal. Left side is diminished. He needs decompression. She said it the way you say the sky is overcast. A fact requiring acknowledgement, not argument. I said, you are a float nurse. Step back. She said, Ray, left side now. Nobody calls me Ray on the floor. I'm Kowalski, your charge, and sometimes Dr. Kowalski from people who do not know better. She said my name the way a person says it who has been in enough serious rooms to understand that titles are furniture. And this is not the time for furniture. And something in me, 22 years of reading a room, heard it. I stepped back. I am not certain I made a decision. I think I simply stopped being in her way. What she did in the next 4 minutes I have reviewed a great many times, and the only word I have for it is surgical. Not in the medical sense, though what she performed was a needle decompression of the chest cavity, which requires a level of training and nerve I am not going to understate, but in the sense of no wasted motion, no hesitation, no performing for the room. She called for the equipment before I had thought to reach for it. She named the gauge, the site, the angle. She narrated what she was doing in the same flat informational tone. Not for us, I understand now, but the way trained people talk themselves through a procedure under pressure to keep their own sequence clean. When the rush of air came and the patient's oxygen saturation began its climb back from the floor, she was already calling across to Bay 3. The motorcyclist, she said. He was in the water. What's his core temp? The nurse in Bay 3 called it back. She crossed the floor without breaking stride. Bay 3 was a different problem. A younger patient, hypothermic on top of traumatic injury, whose pressure was dropping in a way that made very little sense given what we could see on the surface. She looked at the chart for 4 seconds. She put her hand on his wrist and counted. She asked the nurse for his breathing pattern since arrival. Then she started talking, and what she described was a management sequence I had not heard articulated in exactly that order before. Prioritize core warming, hold the pressors until core temp rose above a threshold, manage the rhythm with specific parameters rather than aggressive fluid resuscitation. She cited numbers. She cited them the way people cite numbers they learned in a specific kind of classroom, not a hospital classroom. I asked her later where she learned that protocol. She said, open water in a rescue swimmer harness, trying to keep a hypothermic sailor alive on a 30-minute flight to shore. She said it the way you described something you have done more than once. She moved between the 2 bays for the next 30 minutes. Harmon was stabilizing in the corridor with our nurse on him. Patel had the head injury under control. The 2 critical patients in bays 1 and 3 were alive, and their numbers were moving in the right direction. And the floor around me had gone very quiet, the specific quiet of people who are working hard but have also, in some portion of their attention, stopped to watch something they did not expect to see. Her badge had swung loose at some point during the first bay. The lanyard had come half out of her pocket, and the inside face of the badge holder was visible. I noticed it during a moment when she paused to confirm what the monitor was telling her. On the inside of the badge holder, opposite her ID, was a small round patch, an orange rescue swimmer insignia over a dark background, the kind an aviation survival technician wears on a Coast Guard flight suit. I registered it, did not know what to make of it, and then the monitor alarmed and she was moving again. At 11:20, the radio at the nurse's station made a sound I have never heard before, a Channel 16 Marine call, routed through our hospital emergency communication system, which happens only when someone with the right credentials specifically requests it. The voice on the other end asked for Portside Regional ER. The unit secretary answered. The voice said it was the commanding officer of Coast Guard Station Portside, and he was looking for a medical personnel by the call sign of Anchor. The unit secretary looked at me. I looked down the hall. Cara Denning was at the supply room door, where she had gone to retrieve something during a quiet interval, and she had stopped walking. Her head had come up. She stood very still for a moment, and then she walked back to the nurse's station and picked up the handset. This is Anchor, she said. What came through that radio was brief, official, and completely clear. The CO had been notified that she was on shift at this facility. He had 2 of his people in the parking lot. He wanted to know if this was a good time. She said it was. She set the handset down. I was standing 3 feet away. She looked at me. There was no triumph in it, no accounting. She looked at me the way a person looks at another person when they have both just been through something together. And the time for explanations is later. She said, Bay 1 is stable. His pressure will need to be watched. Patel has my notes. She paused. The motorcyclist is going to need another hour before his core temp is where you want it. Watch the rhythm. Then she walked down the corridor toward the entrance. I followed, because I did not know what else to do. They came through the automatic doors. 2 in flight suits with the orange stripe on the shoulder, a third in a service uniform with the insignia of a commanding officer. The whole floor had gone quiet again. I saw the PA stop writing. I saw 2 of my nurses drift to the corridor's edge without being aware they had done it. The CO walked directly to her. He looked at her the way a man looks at someone he has relied on in dangerous water, with a particular respect that does not require ceremony to be legible. He said, Anchor. She said, Captain. He said, we lost track of you after you mustered out. It took us a while to find you. She said, I found a different kind of water. He looked around the corridor, the bays, the monitors, the nurses at their stations. Me stand at the edge of all of it. He said, your charge nurse here did us a solid, keeping you close to the bay. He looked at me directly. We appreciate it. I could not think of a single word to say. There was nothing in me to correct what he thought, and there was nothing in me to agree with it honestly. I stood there with 22 years of reading a room behind me, and I had nothing. He turned back to her. He said that the two men behind him were former rescue swimmers she had pulled out of a sinking vessel 3 years ago, and they had driven 4 hours because they heard she was at this hospital, and they wanted to shake her hand. He did not elaborate on the vessel or the conditions. He did not need to. The way they stood, straight-spined, squared to her, their hands coming out one at a time, said everything the words would have cluttered. She shook the first man's hand. She shook the second. She said something low to each of them. I could not hear it. The CO said they would not keep her. He said there was a medal waiting for her in the record that she had never formally received, had mustered out before the ceremony, and that his station would like to rectify that whenever she was ready. He said it was her choice, her time. He said the station's door was open. She thanked him. She said she would think about it. They left the same way they came, down the corridor, through the automatic doors, into the gray November morning, and the floor was silent for a full 3 seconds after the doors closed. Then Patel's monitor alarmed from Bay 2 and everyone moved, because that is what you do in a place like this. You move, and the morning continued. I went to her. I did not know how to begin, so I did not try to find a beginning. I said, I sent you to the supply room. She looked at me. She said, you did. I said, you should have pushed back. She said, I did. She was right. She had done exactly what pushing back looks like in a person who does not need the room's permission to know what they are worth. She had gone to the supply room with the clipboard. She had come back through the door when it mattered. She had done the work in front of everyone who needed to see it, without a word about what she was owed. I told her I was sorry. I meant it. She said, I know you did what you thought was right. We're good, Ray. She picked up her stethoscope from the counter and walked back toward the bay, and the floor opened around her the way it opens around people it has decided it trusts, which was the only verdict that mattered now. I stood there for another moment, looking at the doors the CO and his people had walked out of. I thought about the word he had used, solid, that Ray Kowalski kept her close. I have been a charge nurse at Portside Regional for 22 years. I know how to read a room and how to read a person, and I would like to believe I am honest enough to know when I have read both wrong. She goes by Anchor. I should have asked sooner what the name meant.